We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with... I had to think about my own name.
Well, you're here with Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered.
If you're wondering how this podcast is going to go, there it is, right there.
Little preview.
Tom forgot his name.
Little bit of a nutshell.
So my wife is sick.
Okay.
Sunday night, she was, and we don't know what's wrong with her. She doesn't seem to have like flu symptoms or COVID symptoms or anything like that. She's just whatever. She was just ill and nauseated and stuff like that. And I am heavily governed by my psychology, and therefore, if she's sick, then I am just waiting to get sick. So like I've been feeling sick ever since. So every day I'm like, I don't know if I'll be into work today. I don't know if I'll be able to cycle today. I don't know if I'm going to do the podcast today. You know, I'm constantly feeling sick. So we'll see how this goes. But apparently
we've begun the thing. So
I've forgotten my name. So that's a thing that happened. It's exciting. I had all three of my boys home this weekend.
All three? Whoa.
Unexpectedly. My middle son, who is, 4 or 5 hours away, came home because one of his friends was coming home, and he set up an opportunity to do it's called a swim test. He's a lifeguard, and you're supposed to do a swim test before you... if you stop your employment and restart, you have to redo the swim test to ensure that you were a lifeguard. So he came down with his friend at the last minute, and we were like, "Oh, it was great." So, we had all three boys here for one night, and it was nice. And then the next day, my wife got sick, so I blame her. But yes, that is what I did. And I therefore I did not watch anything because I never watch anything anymore.
Little preview for the next segment there, but that's
my 15-year-old son has now gotten in. He was listening to his ADHD brain was in the other room, and instead of doing his homework, he was listening to us watch the Golden Girls, and came out and was like, "What are you guys watching?" And now he's watching the Golden Girls with me. So
there's a reason it was a popular sitcom.
It's not. He's like, "Who's that man?" I'm like, "She's not a man. She has a very husky voice." He didn't actually say that, but it would have been funny if he had. Love the Golden Girls. It's funny too because it's like I would grew up. It started at 85 to 92. I looked it up, so that's like right prime my high school years. A little bit high school, a little bit after. And I'm just like, God, you could see the tropes that are, like the grandson walks in the room and he's wearing a leather jacket. I'm like, he's a troublemaker. He's wearing a leather jacket. And by the end of the show, he's now come around and he's, whatever. And my son looks at me and he goes, "He's not wearing that leather jacket anymore."
Of course not.
He's not the troublemaker anymore. I said, and this is why my entire generation either owned or wanted to own a leather jacket when we were that age.
There was Fonzie too. That wasn't out of your generation. That definitely had an influence. The Fonz for sure. These days it would be, the kid would have either entirely blue hair or at least a streak of blue hair, and then by the end he wouldn't have blue in his hair anymore.
And a piercing, nose piercing, or whatever. What are they? Gauges is what they call them. I think in your ears.
That would be a little difficult to do very quickly.
Yeah, but whatever.
And I think the
what
nose
did you watch, Rob?
I didn't even get a chance to do any updates before you jumped right into everything going on your side of the woods.
Yeah, I'm important. That's why.
Yeah, that's right. No, not that there's tremendous changes in my personal life, which I am thankful for. Things have settled down just a little bit. My floor is not repaired yet because I'm doing a little negotiating with my strata, and they might end up covering at least a portion of the cost, which they should cover a portion of the cost anyway, but they might end up covering the whole thing, and we're not entirely sure. So there's a little back and forth going on there, some estimates happening. So floor is not repaired yet from the second of two fairly quick in succession water leaks, but we've had lots of rain over the past few days, and no further leaks inside my apartment. Good. And if I put my ear up to that column in my living room, I can hear the water making its way down that drain, which is a good sign. Good sign that the water's going down and not just standing still and building pressure as as it clogs at the bottom. Comes in from the top and bursts in the weakest part, which happens to be either the coupling or the new clean-out installed in my apartment. So no further troubles there. Things for my aunt's living situation have more or less settled down, and people are settling in, and the old apartment is completely moved out. So yes, it's kind of nice to not have dramatic personal changes going on, but did just want to mention, election has now been called, snap election called in Canada. So, for folks in the U.S. who are used to the campaigning in your particularly federal elections going on for, it's not an exaggeration to say years, plural, the campaigning goes on in the U.S. federal elections. Ours, 5 weeks. You got 5 weeks to do your campaign. We're voting on April the 28th. There's advanced voting before that. It's quick. So Mark Carney, who is, become the leader of the Liberal Party and therefore has automatically become the prime minister for the time being, he has called this election and the election date for literally as soon as it is possible to do within our system. So it will be very interesting to see what the outcome is going to be. It is not at all certain that the Liberals are going to win and he will remain prime minister. He might have just put himself out of the prime minister job as quickly as anyone can possibly do so. But at the same time, the momentum has shifted towards the Liberal side. He is attempting to take some advantage of that before I guess there's even time to do something wrong and have it shift back the other way. So it's a calculated risk for sure. And I just had a good, hearty, deep chuckle I was watching some commentary from the US news coverage and there were some people questioning why the newly installed prime minister would call an election so quickly and therefore open himself to the opportunity of losing his position of power. And I saw one person comment like, that seems like it could be potentially quite self-sacrificing, and I don't understand why a politician would do that. And I just had to have a hearty chuckle at the notion that it's just a completely foreign idea that someone could have a self-sacrificing idea in politics.
Right.
And
Isn't
not
that
just
the whole point of being in politics?
Not just be clinging on to power at all costs.
Yeah.
Because he could have waited until October. He could have seen.
Well, but on top of that, though, if he wins, the other side of it is if he wins, he's got a clear mandate from the people.
And that's exactly what he's saying. Been pretty good about. For anyone who's paying attention, there are just like much of the rest of the world, there are, I would say, probably the slight majority of Canadians really aren't paying attention to political news and just maybe even actively trying to keep it out of their mindsets whatsoever.
Imagine why.
Right. But for the people who are paying attention, the messaging has been pretty darn clear. So I think this is a fairly clear-cut election with not a ton of ambiguity about what we're going to be voting for. So it's rather interesting, and it's going to be here and gone literally as quickly as our system allows. So yeah, interesting times as far as that goes. That's what's been going on over on my side.
Exciting. What did you watch?
Yes, I watched 2 movies this week, and I'm going to start with the more predictable, although it surprised me a little bit, was Venom: The Last Dance. This is the third and, rather clearly final movie in the Venom trilogy starring Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy has basically said that he doesn't really intend to keep on playing this character because, of course, with the whole Marvel multiverse, there's every possibility that they could, try to bring him back, playing Venom, playing Eddie Brock again. Sure. But he's more or less said that, barring some magical change, like, say, a gigantic truck of money, he's probably done playing this character. Now, he was involved with the writing and production of Venom: The Last Dance. And like I say, this movie kind of did surprise me a little bit in that it played things very straight. It was, very straightforward and not trying to do some kind of twist ending or real surprise, like what was forecast and foreshadowed for you is what happens. It just played this straight, and it's more or less a road trip movie. This one, that's pretty much what's going on. And I mean, it does sort of hinge on Tom Hardy's performance. He is strange as ever. I mean, it's not that Venom alone is strange, it's that Eddie Brock is really weird.
Right.
That is Tom Hardy. He's also voicing Venom with a lot of modulation being done to his voice there. So he's mostly performing with himself, or at least the voice of himself. I actually thought the CGI in this movie, because the things that were, obviously being CGI'd didn't need to look like real life. Like, these are alien symbiote creatures that are all stringy and slimy and stretchy, and that's most of it, and then the rest is kind of explosions and things like that, or other alien creatures. And so, since it doesn't have to look like something we're familiar with in everyday life, I thought that, at least as far as making the lighting look realistic, making it look like these things were integrated into the scene that we're watching and not standing out and looking like, a cartoon that's been drawn into a live action or something. I thought the CGI was done really well, honestly. I thought it was better than a lot of recent Marvel movies in that. I thought the motion of things looked really good, which is something that you mentioned, like in Daredevil, there's moments where the motion stands out as not looking quite right when it's the digital doubles and stuff like that. And I thought that part of this movie was done really, really well. Now, there's basically two storylines going on. There's Eddie Brock and Venom and the little road trip that he's taking, and he sort of meets up with this sort of hippie family that's out searching for aliens and making their way towards Area 51. Because in this movie universe, Area 51 is publicly being shut down, and they want to get there for one last look around before the place is closed down. And then there's a second separate movie plot going on with the scientists who are studying the symbiotes underneath Area 51 in a Area 55 that nobody knows about. And there's military involvement. And then the biggest disappointment for Marvel Comics
fans... If you're
fans...
going to set up a secret lab, make sure you set it up at a well-known secret lab.
That's right. But
right underneath.
Tom, no one would think to look underground. You wouldn't think to look under Area 51.
Nobody would go,
Area
where does
51
this
is right
button
there.
on the elevator go?
That's
what
right.
does this button do?
No one would think of it. But you got Juno Temple playing the lead scientist, and it's almost like two completely separate movies with two pretty starkly different tones as we switch back and forth between the two of them. Naturally, by the end, the two storylines sort of converge, but it did feel like there was plenty left on the cutting room floor in this movie. But like I say, playing it quite straight like that, I was sort of, pleasantly surprised that they didn't go for a strange twist. Now, what will really disappoint Marvel fans and Venom fans in particular is they did, I'll say, introduce the character of Null, who had
the symbiote god.
Yeah, the symbiote god who was here before the universe began and is probably more powerful than Thanos was. That type of idea. And so people were kind of hoping that, this will be Sony's big bad for their Spider-Man without Spider-Man type of crossover universe and that. But
Null
I say,
not exactly the most exciting of villains. I'll be honest with you. I've watched many, because I don't have time to read. I don't have time to watch movies, but I've watched YouTube videos about Marvel Universe, just sort of catching up on stuff and figuring out some of these major characters, and DC too, not just Marvel. And everything about Null is just sort of I don't know. It sort of feels very Castlevania. You know what I mean? He's just sort of white-haired, evil vampire-y guy with powers. It's just kind of generic to me. But
this movie it feels a bit like a throwback. It feels like a bit of a throwback to sort of 90s style action movies back in the day when they would introduce the gigantic global, or in this case, galactic or universe-ending threat.
Right.
And these days we're used to, that villain kind of succeeds in their plan. And then we have to see how our heroes manage with this cataclysmic type of event and piece things all back together. We're kind of used to that being the way things go these days. But back in the 90s, they would introduce this catastrophic thing that the villain was planning, and then you would foil that plan.
Right.
And that's more or less what this
and
movie
does. There was always a sex scene 2/3 of the way through the movie. Just like they're getting it in there somehow.
We don't have that anymore.
Somebody's taking their top off.
We don't have that. Although this one did. I don't know if this one went for the R rating, because we finally get Venom actually eating some heads in this movie, which he's been promising to do for the past 2 movies, but being the PG-13 rating was never allowed to be shown, and they finally let him eat some heads in this movie. So I'm not sure if they went for the higher rating, although they just had the one F word, so I think there was still the PG-13. I'm not sure how they got away with
trying to look it up
head
right
eating.
now. Hold on a second.
But anyway, yeah, that was Venom: The Last Dance. So in a way, I was kind of mildly pleasantly surprised by it, because I was expecting it to be worse, and I was expecting it to go for some kind of stupid twist, and it didn't really do any of that. It just played it very straight, but at the same time, it played it very straight. It was kind of a throwback. It was a smaller movie. The budget was obviously lower for this one, and so yeah, it's not going to rock your socks off or anything like that, but if you've kind of enjoyed the previous 2 Venom movies, this is, I think, a successful conclusion to the trilogy. I think it did it nicely. It actually had kind of a nice little heartwarming moment towards the end and put a nice little ribbon and a bow on everything. So I give it a mild thumbs up. I didn't mind it at all.
I can't find the rating. God, it seems like that would be it'd be right there. It should be at the top.
You should be able to just Google rating, and it should.
And if you Google rating, it just gives you reviews. It's very annoying.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Google is so useful these days. But the other movie that I watched this week is this year's
PG-13. Found it.
PG-13. Okay. Well, somehow they did the head eating. Anyway, The other movie I watched this week is this year's Oscar Best Picture winner, Anora. So yes, this has become available on streaming on Amazon Prime, at least in Canada. I'm not sure if it's worldwide available on Amazon Prime. But yes, I did watch this movie. And so I'll say right off the bat, I'm not 100% sure why this won Best Picture. I
think that almost every single movie that's won Best Picture, once you watch it and you're like, what?
Like, this is a well-executed movie. It is a very well-performed movie. So,
sure.
Mikey Madison winning Best Actress, that I can absolutely see. And it's in a way where this isn't the type of performance where it like jumps out of the screen and you're like, whoa, look at the acting of this person. I think she deserved the Best Actress award because it seemed like someone had just put a camera on a real life person, and you didn't see the acting, even though there's some pretty big scenes that go on in this movie, like, emotional and screaming and stuff like that. Her acting was really, really, really believable. Like, I didn't feel like I was watching an actor doing a performance. It felt like a camera was on a real life person. So for that reason, I thought it really was quite stellar acting that she was doing there. So happy with her winning that award. Yeah, this is the tale of she's an exotic dancer. There's a young Russian oligarch's son. He comes in splashing money around and, sort of hires her for private services and that. But then the two of them end up having really, honestly, an on-screen quite cute love affair that, seems rather genuine in that. But then his parents find out that he's carrying on in the United States and splashing all this money around and asking this girl to marry him. And they decide, we're going to put a stop to that because he's supposed to be over in the U.S. Studying and coming back to Russia to work in whatever company they work in. Everyone is afraid of them, but we never find out exactly what it is that the family does. This movie is a lot funnier than I had any idea it was going to be. I don't know if you could outright call it a comedy, but it is dark humor throughout. And I think maybe the reason this garnered so much praise from the Hollywood critics, like the stereotypical Hollywood critics that we all think about, is because, she fights back at every turn. She fights and fights and fights and fights, and that, gets us on her side from that sense. But the reason it's able to stay somewhat comedic is that the people she is, physically fighting back against are actually quite honorable. Like, they will never hit this girl. There is they'll try to hug her so that she doesn't kick them anymore. That type of, like, they will never strike her, and they're actually trying to reason with her throughout the entire thing. And that, so it's like this could have turned really, really quickly to not the least bit humorous, but because they kept the antagonists actually quite honorable people, despite the bad things they're doing. Like, there's line they won't cross, and they never cross it, and so that allows this movie to be darkly humorous throughout. So I mean, it is, I wouldn't quite go as far as riveting, but it absolutely holds my attention the entire way through, even though I can't say I really like pretty much any of these characters. I mean, they're all making terrible decisions, and I mean, it's just drugs and sex and drugs and sex and on and on and on. And for all the comments about the language being like exceedingly overly profane, I'm like, no, it wasn't. I've heard.
Have you ever talked to Tom when he's not on the podcast?
I've heard
believe me, I've heard worse.
way more exaggerated profanity and lots of things. So that being clued in on, I had no idea why that was the thing that a lot of reviewers keyed in on, because I mean, yes, there's profanity in this movie, but it sounded really quite natural. So yeah, quite a bit of unexpected stuff in Anora for me. I don't want to spoil too much, more than I have. I've sort of done the basic plot of it. But yeah,
this is the sort of movie my wife would love, I think.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, if you're really put off by, I mean, I'll say, situations that are potentially much more violent than they ended up being, even though there's plenty of violence. Like I said, like,
she wouldn't like that part.
Yeah, they don't cross over that line, which is kind of nice. Like, it's kind of nice that we have a movie that these are characters who set their own sort of lines and they stick to them. And that's kind of interesting to see in this day and age. And then, yeah, there is, the cathartic breakdown at the end, which alters the tone, but it's all earned and it all makes sense. And these characters that I don't like but are strangely likable and are definitely interesting. So, I mean, with all of that, I am giving this movie praise. I am giving it a thumbs up. But yeah, to say it was the best picture of the entire year, I thought, okay, maybe I didn't get quite that far on it, but I am in favor of watching Anora, as long as you kind of know what you're getting in for, because if you really don't like, sort of crime-based movies and movies that do have all this potential violence and lots of yelling and fighting back and lots of nudity and all that type of stuff, then that's not going to be the movie for you. It should be pretty easy to tell very early on whether this is a movie you're going to be able to stomach or not. There.
Yeah, on IMDb, it has it listed in this order as dark comedy, raunchy comedy, romantic comedy, steamy romance, comedy, drama, romance. Okay. And I guess that's it. That's what it has it listed as, in that order.
I mean, I do kind of like how bad at sex everyone is in this movie. Like, that was also kind of funny. They have a lot of sex, but they're not good at it.
Well, let's set expectations more realistic than what movies have done for us in the past. Let's be honest here. Like, it's strange enough to have conversations with your kids about sex, but to also have to tell them, listen, if you think what you see on TV or the movies or on specific websites or what's going to happen in real life, and that's how you're going to be, it is not. Okay, let's just lower these expectations down and realize you're going to be going into this like the first time you ever rode a bike. You fell off the first time. You fell off, and you hurt yourself, and you maybe hurt somebody else, and it was embarrassing, and you never wanted to do it again. But then you decided to go ahead and try, and then eventually you got reasonably okay, and that's where you stayed. You stayed in this. I get the job done. That's hopefully. Maybe not everybody. I don't know.
That's what we watched.
That's what we watched. All right. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. Yes, by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to the website and comment. No, you can't comment. Come to the website. You can find our shows, show notes, audio, Flickr albums to follow along with the pictures. Links to products and articles we will be mentioning throughout this podcast, and timestamps, I guess, are also on there so that you can fast forward past Rob talking about having sex on a bicycle.
Ever more important these days, those timestamps.
They are getting more important.
Just pick out the sections you want, folks. That's the easiest way.
Just skip past all that. Rob explaining to the American crowd all about the parliamentary system and what's going on in Canada. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact us directly, Rob at AVRant.com. His socials is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. I am not on the socials that much. Thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you can support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to AVRant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and that'll take you to a PayPal donation site where you can donate to keep us afloat.
Yeah.
There's a very good chance my wife is going to walk in the store very soon.
Okay.
So she's coming home from a meeting, and the dog will go crazy, and then it'll be a thing. So I'm just keeping an eye on my phone for that. You can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can sign up to be a monthly contributor, where they'll take some money from you and give most of it to us. We currently have 132 patrons at patreon.com. We want to thank each and every one of you.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, a big thanks to our 132 patrons. One person did let us know, like just this morning, that he just set that up. So that's how it ticked up from 131 last week to 132 this week. And he sent in a question. I forgot to mark down the name, so apologies for all of that. And we won't reach your question this week, but we appreciate the financial support, and we'll get to you next week.
We also got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through the ongoing stuff.
Sure. World keeps turning.
I kind of feel like some of the stuff that happens in the U.S. government right now, that if you did it at, like, if you were a fry cook at McDonald's and you did it, they would immediately fire you. Immediately, without, there would be no question.
Okay.
But apparently you get to keep your job here. Notes of gratitude from Infinite Gary, who said, what about the name AV Underwater, which also works. Thank you very much, Gary. Martin, Dazz, Greg, and Joe. So that's Gary, Infinite Gary, Martin, Dazz, Greg, and Joe. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, indeed. I'll say the names one more time. Gary, Martin, Dazz, Greg, and Joe. Thank you very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are definitely appreciated these days. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news, WiiM, two eyes, WiiM.
That's right.
Has introduced their new 2-channel Vibelink amp priced at $300, with stereo analog inputs that provide a pure analog signal path, because that's important, but also optical and digital coax inputs with an ESS DAC built in, plus volume control. It's actually a stereo integrated amp. And it's housed in a compact unibody aluminum chassis that fits perfectly with the footprint of a WiiM Pro or Ultra streamer, and with passive aluminum cooling fins inside, along with copper heat pipes. The whole body acts as a heat sink, so no fans are required. It does kind of beg the question whether or not you should stack it, which is what everybody's going to do.
I mean,
everybody's going to stack it because it's the exact same footprint.
So I don't think there's very much problem with this thing at all. Yeah, it's all aluminum body. There's fins inside. I think it should run very, very, very cool to the touch.
Yeah, all that heat's going to warm up your streamer. Anyways, Texas Instruments Class D amplifier chips and op amps provide 100 watts per channel to 8 ohms, with a true doubling of 200 watts per channel at 4 ohms. That's a 12-volt trigger input on the back, and the built-in speaker wire terminals only accept banana plugs, because they fancy. And they include banana plug terminals in the box.
Yes, so if you do just have bare speaker wire and you don't already have them pre-terminated in banana plugs, not to worry. They give you some banana plugs there, but on the back of the unit itself, it's flush. The place where the speaker wires connect is flush. There's no binding posts sticking out the back of this thing, so those will only accept banana plugs going into what is built into the amplifier itself.
Fancy. The Class D amps use post-filter feedback so that their frequency response does not change with speaker impedance changes, which is a problem with Class D amps.
It possibly can be, yeah.
And the built-in DAC for the optical and digital coax inputs goes up to 192 kilohertz, 24-bit. The WiiM Vibelink Amp that's a dumb name. Vibelink?
I don't know.
What does it mean?
I mean, I didn't give it that. I have to call it what they called it.
What does it mean, Vibelink?
I mean, it's
Are
vibes.
You linking to the vibes?
It's vibes, and it links to something, because it's not a source. It's not a source device. It's an integrated amp, not a receiver. Yeah.
It's a dumb name. And I would like that to be well known. Anyways, it's shipping. It's shipping right now.
Yep.
You can get your vibes on.
You can buy it at Amazon. So, I mean,
I'm vibing with this.
I like the form factor of this thing.
Where's the link? I want to look at this thing.
Yeah, I think $300, not a terrible price whatsoever. No. Especially one that, 100 watts at 8 ohms, but a true doubling down, 200 watts at 4 ohms. You don't always see that with things like that. So, some engineering prowess has been put into this thing. So is it the least expensive 2-channel amplifier ever? No, but if you're going for this type of form factor, if you like the upgraded build quality, because definitely this, all aluminum unibody design, it's got a little bit more aesthetic niceness to it, a little bit. It feels like a higher build quality than, say, some of the Fosse amplifiers that we love the performance of those, but they're probably not going to win awards for like the build quality or the looks of the thing on the outside. So
I like the way most of those look. And some of this has got too many nods to audiophiles for me not to beam out of it a little bit. Yeah. Advanced thermal management. Stay cool, play longer. Okay, so it stops playing at some point? Is that what you're suggesting with this?
It really won't. It's Class D. It's not.
That's what it says, though. It plays longer until it stops. I mean, that's what it means. It would have stopped earlier. And the pure analog input, no ADC conversion, no compromise. Right. No compromise from what? You're connecting it to a streamer. Mm-hmm. Will you get an analog streams from some? Mm-hmm. Do you have cables that goes directly to the cameras in the Netflix office? I mean, what are you talking about? Stop being stupid.
They are trying to appeal to a certain crowd. There's no question about that. Nevertheless, I might recommend this thing from time to time.
Vibelink. Vibing with the audio files. Netflix has gotten... My wife just found out that Netflix increased their prices, and she is not happy.
I know. I canceled mine again. I had it for a little while I watched Arcane, and then I held on for a month or two after that just to check out a few other things in standard dynamic range only and 1080p only, because I'm like, I'm not paying more than the ad-supported one. And then they're like, hey, Canada, $2 a month more for even the ad-supported one. I'm like, nope, I'm out again. But yeah, that was Netflix.
Netflix has gotten on board with HDR10+. Samsung TV owners rejoice. Mm-hmm. Finally. While the majority of Netflix content streams using the AVC H.264 codec, whatever. They've been migrating most of their SDR content over to AV1 codec to use lower bandwidth. In terms of HDR10 and Dolby Vision, they're still streaming in H.264, but the AV1 codec can handle HDR10+. So Netflix has already converted about half of their HDR library to be available that way, with the intention to make their entire HDR catalog available in HDR10+ by the end of 2025. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, Netflix says they will only accept Dolby Vision master files from studios, and all the other versions are created from that, and things will continue that way. So these HDR10+ versions are being derived from Dolby Vision masters regardless. Mm-hmm. So, maybe your Samsung TV won't play it.
Oh, it'll play it.
It hates Dolby Vision.
It was always playing the HDR10 version before, but now you can have some, I'm assuming, automatically derived frame or scene by scene dynamic metadata in the HDR10 Plus container, but all derived from a Dolby Vision master to begin with. So I don't know. Somebody's going to be upset. Somebody's going to be happy. I don't know. Somebody always is online, but there it is.
The Reddit's going to call it the fake HDR10 Plus.
Sure. Also, they did mention that if your television or streaming device supports both Dolby Vision and HDR10+, that it will prioritize Dolby Vision over HDR10+. So that's what you can expect to happen.
I don't know how they can tell my TV what to do. They're not the boss of my TV.
Yeah. This
comes from Infinite Gary. Last year, the projector company Barco started a pilot program at 5 different theaters across the U.S., AMC in L.A., AMC in Kansas City, Missouri, B&B in Dallas, Regal in Fort Lauderdale, and Regal in New York. Mm-hmm. The goal was to test their very own HDR format for cinemas, and it uses Barco's light steering technology.
Don't roll your eyes too much at that, Tom. It's legitimate. It's basically local dimming for projectors.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's still not steering light.
It really kind of is. Laser light engines, it's a single stable laser like we've been used to, or might be more than one, but like a steady light source, and then a secondary laser that is calculated to interact with the stable laser to do like kind of light waveforming. It's pretty darn advanced. They're having to use like high-end NVIDIA GPUs to do all the calculations. So it's like a light wave interference patterns to boost the light output in certain areas and then cancel the light output in other areas.
So they're bending it, is it what you're suggesting? They're bending the light? Because that's what steering is. Or are they just amplifying it?
Well, I mean, it's steering in the sense of wave steering, right? You're using a stationary laser and a mobile laser to create wave interference patterns, controlled wave interference patterns. So, yeah, it's pretty advanced stuff.
Sounds amazing. I'm so amazed. This is my amazed face. To produce brighter HDR highlights than Dolby Cinema installations. How much brighter? Well, about 300 nit peak highlights instead of Dolby Cinema's 108 nit peak highlights. So that's brighter.
It is.
Interestingly, that's right about the same peak nit highlights as Samsung's Onyx Direct View cinema screens that use micro LEDs.
Yeah.
So they called it HDR by Barco, and it requires cinema movie files that have been specifically graded for their format. Transformers 1 and The Wild Robot tried it out last year. Mm-hmm. And now 2 new theaters, Cinepolis in LA, which I've been to, the Alamo Draft House in San Francisco, have decided to make permanent HDR by Barco installations, while 3 of the pilot program theaters are carrying on with it as well. The 2 AMC theaters have ended their pilot program. The movie Novocaine, which they were advertising the absolute crap out of, which means it probably sucks, marks the first showings of the new HDR by Barco theaters, and a Minecraft movie, Warfare, and The Accountant 2 will be next. Wasn't The Accountant that
Ben Affleck movie? He's back.
Ben Affleck movie where he's autistic, but
that's right.
Whatever. Yeah, it's weird. I know that one needed a sequel. Gary is keen.
It's been a long time, too. It's like a legacy sequel at this point.
That was a very old movie. I think my kids, at least 2 of them weren't alive yet. Maybe all 3. Gary is keen to hear if we think this is a meaningful difference in cinema performance, or if it's just a slight difference from the HDR cinema experiences that were already available before and more widely spread. I mean, it's clearly brighter. I mean, that is a significant increase in brightness.
And I don't think they're lying about that. I mean, they're like, give us a 300 nit peak master file as opposed to what Dolby, because Dolby Cinema master files have to be specifically graded for Dolby Cinemas and aren't particularly useful anywhere else. This is a similar thing, although, like I said, it's kind of interesting that they more or less targeted the same peak nit light output as Samsung's Onyx micro LED displays. So I'm assuming the hope there is that you can kind of cross-pollinate a little bit, because, I mean, the master file really only cares about what is the peak nit light output and what is the bottom of the black level floor, and therefore what is the range of contrast that we have to work with here. So if you can make a projection technology and a micro LED direct view technology very similar in those capabilities, well, then that's good. That's slightly less work that studios that want to support these HDR formats in the cinemas have to do. So I don't think that was necessarily by accident that they ended up targeting that particular peak nit light output. So I do think there is some significance here. What is interesting is we have had 0 Dolby Cinemas anywhere in Canada. We do not have them because we have a theater company that more or less has a monopoly on ownership of all the theaters across Canada. Not quite literally, but pretty darn close to it. But they have started installing 1 or 2 of these HDR by Barco projectors because they can convert their existing large format, not IMAX, not Screen X, but their largest auditoriums that, what do we call it? AMX or whatever the heck it is, AVX, there we go. I was forgetting it for a second, but we have the AVX auditoriums, which are like the bigger screens, the more seats, the larger sound systems. That's where all the Atmos ones are here in Canada. So they've been starting converting, just a couple of them, starting in Toronto, of course, to these HDR by Barco, because they don't have to retrofit the entire theater like a Dolby Cinema requires, because that has a whole thing about all the seats have to be changed, and it has to have the exact, tiering height light that Dolby specifies, and you have to change the entrance to the theater. So it's a big renovation to convert an existing theater to a Dolby Cinema. Whereas this one, they're like, well, you change the projector. And that's what changes there. But it's a very expensive, gigantic, exceedingly power-hungry projector that Barco is using for this process. Plus, like I say, these really high-end NVIDIA GPUs that are necessary for that light steering calculation to be going on. So this is not an inexpensive installation, but if you're considering you're replacing the projector and not everything else in the theater, then it's less expensive than converting it to a Dolby Cinema.
Still look at that WiiM thing.
Of course.
They put this in this acronym PFFB everywhere. So
Sure.
post filter feedback, whatever the B stands for.
Is it a B? I thought it was a T for technology.
No, it's not. It's
Oh.
PFFB.
I don't know then.
And what's the B for?
I don't know.
Post filter feedback B. But they put it everywhere, and it just looks like.
I mean, it kind of does.
Just like, well, but what's the B? They don't explain it. Why is there a B? Where is it on here someplace? Am I missing it?
Why are you so interested in this thing?
It just says post filter feedback, and then they have
it does say technology, but
PFFB, and then it says technology. Where's the B coming from?
I don't know, Tom.
It doesn't make sense. It's so stupid. Why are you so stupid?
Let it go.
That's the technology. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's a very nice amp. It doesn't look like those speaker terminal things that you should be able to like push them in with your thumb, and then they would pop out, and then you could put the speaker wire on the side.
That is not what has been described.
That they should do that. That should be the version 2.
I see. Nope, they just included banana plugs in the box so that you can connect your speaker wires.
Well, I think they should do that too, but
Yes.
I think that they should have it pop out. That would be kind of cool. Not to be outdone, Dolby and Christie just announced their newest 6-chip DLP projector that they're hoping will expand the adoption of Dolby Cinema installations. Clearly, it's the projector the problem, not the renovations. That's dumb. That's so Dolby, though. If you've ever met the Dolby people, and I have, and I'm not saying they're bad people, I'm just saying that the culture of Dolby is we are the best, and therefore whatever we want is what you should want.
And it costs money.
The new laser projector is smaller, lighter, and brighter, allowing a single unit to power Dolby Cinema screens up to 58 feet wide. Don't tell Infinite Gary.
I know.
Larger screen sizes will require 2 units, but previously 2 projector units were required in all Dolby Cinema installations, so this could significantly reduce the cost for smaller screen size venues. And you have to ask the price, and you can't afford it.
Oh, I mean, this is not consumer stuff. This is commercial movie theater stuff. But so who knows? Maybe they're feeling a little bit of pressure from Barco going on there.
Dolby doesn't.
I kind of doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah.
they're off doing their own thing. But
I don't really think that has anything to do with it.
They want more Dolby Cinemas, and one way to do it is to make a smaller, lighter, less expensive, you only need one of them projector. That is certainly going to help, because it was that much more of a hurdle to get over when you needed 2, and both of them were larger and heavier and cost more than this new one. So good on Dolby and Christie for developing the technology further.
Comments from listeners. Martin Hurst mentioned Grinder's tale from last week about one of his SVS PB13 Ultra subwoofers going silent on him and having to pay several $100s to get a replacement amp since he was past the warranty period and he had to go through with a Canadian distributor rather than getting a new amp directly from SVS in the States. I mean, those Canadians are going to screw you every chance they get. That's what we know. That is true.
We're forced to pay more. That's certainly the case.
Well, Martin's PC2000 sub suddenly went silent on him recently, and is 6 months past the end of his warranty, and he lives in Denmark. Mm-hmm. Let's see how money hungry the Danes are. He too got in touch with SVS, and they put him in touch with the local SVS distributor in Denmark, so he was expecting a similar outcome to Grinder. But to his pleasant surprise, they barely asked him any questions before they collected his shipping address and sent him a replacement amp free of charge. Mm-hmm. So another great story of great customer service from SVS, even when it's their distributor partner in Denmark. And another reason not to like Canada.
Seems to be.
I will tell you that I have a friend of mine. I don't know if she bought it or if she got it from somebody else, because cycling gear gets handed around quite a bit because people try things out and they don't like it for one reason or another. Anyways, she got this radar. It's a radar that goes. It's a light and a radar. It goes on the back of your bike, and it connects to your head unit, and then it'll tell you when the cars are coming and how fast they're coming, and not where in the lane, but just that there's something coming behind you. And it's made by Garmin, and I've had it for a while. It's always been a little glitchy, but lately it's just gone crazy. And it's just like not working. It turned itself off. It gave me a bunch of errors and stuff like that. So I went on the Garmin website, and Garmin was like, I searched it, so the support, put in the model number, and it was like, oh, are you having this problem? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the problem I'm having. No, and they're like, well, click here to get a replacement unit. I'm like, good on you, Garmin. So I clicked on it, and I started putting on all my shipping information. And then it was like, and put in your credit card. I'm like, what? I mean, you guys know that this is a problem because clearly you put a button. It's such a big problem that you put a button on your support website for it. This is clearly a systemic issue. What do you need? My $100. I have to pay $100. I have to pay $100 to get a replacement unit.
How much was the thing on its own originally?
I don't know. I got it for free, so it's now $100. It's now $100 out of my pocket for this thing, and I have to ship it back before they'll ship me the new one. They did send me a free shipping label, so that's, I guess, clearly most of that $100. I don't know. I mean, things like this freaking big. It's like, it's tiny, weighs nothing. Anyways, not as good as SVS Denmark, but about as good as Canadian SVS. Questions. Yanick. Okay. Yanick thinks that streaming video quality has gotten pretty good now, but audio quality is still noticeably lags behind physical discs. It's pretty hard to deny that physical discs are on their way out at this point, so he would very much like to see his streaming movies and movies purchased from Apple movies offered with lossless audio, or at least lossless sounding quality. Plenty of music streaming services offer lossless audio streaming now, so there can't honestly be a technical reason why streaming video services cannot offer a lossless audio, right? He wouldn't be happy about it, but he'd pay extra for a premium tier if it came with lossless immersive audio. So is that genuinely not feasible for some reason? Well, I mean, most of the lossless online streaming music is 2-channel. I mean, at best. Bandwidth-wise, it is... I mean, it's just the music. So there's no video involved, which is where a large majority of the bandwidth goes anyways. Well, I mean,
the video takes up way more bandwidth than the audio no matter what.
Yeah. So could they offer a loss? I mean, obviously Kaleidoscape does it.
That's
but they
not
make
streaming,
you download,
though. That's
not streaming. They make you download the entire movie before you can start. So... do I think that this can happen? Not only do I think it can happen, I think it will happen in some form. I think it's inevitable simply because, just like in every other industry, like if you think of your AV receiver, they're just looking for another sticker to put on the front of their AV receiver. We also have this now. Does it work very well? No, but we got it. So will we see, full lossless whatever audio streaming? Somebody's going to do it. Someone will do it. Will it make enough money for everybody to do it? No. It's just not. It's just not going to do it. People barely care about the video quality much. I mean, they care about like it getting blurry. Do they care about SDR versus HDR? I mean, in vivid mode that they have their TV set on anyways, it's
with all
they're not
the
seeing the difference.
Enhancements turned on, quote unquote.
They're not seeing it anyway, so they're certainly not going to pay for it. If they pay for it, they pay for it because they wanted something else, like not having ads or having access to a larger library. They're not going to pay for full lossless immersive audio. You would, but you are a small subset of a small subset of a small subset. And you and 3 of your friends across the world are not enough for them to implement this widely.
Yeah, so, I mean, on a technical level, of course it is doable. I mean, it would require more bandwidth than they're using now. That is unequivocal, but there's absolutely no reason why, on a technical level, it could not be done. More than that, you mentioned that, sure, you'd like lossless audio, but I mean, what you really care about is that it sounds like lossless audio, not that like if it turns out that technically speaking it's slightly lossy, but you can absolutely never hear the difference, then, he's fine with that. And I think most people would be, in which case, no format change is necessary, because pretty much all the immersive audio that we're getting via any streaming services is via Dolby Digital Plus with an Atmos extension on it. And Dolby Digital Plus has a massive range of bandwidths and bit rates that it can use, and the more bit rate that you allow it to use, the closer it gets to fully lossless quality. Now, Dolby Digital Plus will always be, on a technical level, lossy. It will always be the case that precisely what goes in is not bit for bit exactly what comes back out. It is always going to be slightly lossy. But just like how if you go to 320 kilobit per second AAC, that is always going to be technically lossy, but try to hear the difference between, 320 kilobit AAC and actual bit for bit identical lossless. You're never going to be able to hear the difference. And very similarly with the highest bit rate that's allowable under Dolby Digital Plus for full immersive audio.
Maybe if you connected it through that WiiM
analog, if it had an analog to digital conversion, sure, then.
Well, not without, if you, don't, you got to skip that, go analog straight to the amp.
Yeah.
And then will make all the difference.
Critical, absolutely critical. But they could basically just turn up the dial on the allowable bitrate of Dolby Digital Plus that they're using right now, and you could get really, really, really completely imperceptibly close to lossless audio.
I agree with that.
The issue there is, if they were going to do that, they almost need to be able to market it, because it does require more bandwidth. And to market it, they'd want to be able to market that it's lossless, but then there's going to be some weirdos on Reddit who are like, it's not actually lossless, it's just highest bitrate possible Dolby Digital Plus, which is technically still lossy. And so, there's that weirdness that goes on of, who cares, but there's going to be weirdos on Reddit who care, and then somebody's going to issue a lawsuit, and it's not worth their trouble.
I bet that what they could do is they could get Dolby or somebody to stamp, you know what I mean?
Some new trademarked thing.
Just some trademark name that basically like you said, imperceptibly lossy or something like that. Something that had a name to it.
Just give it an initialism that no one will ever look up, like PFFB, and then you can
for Tom,
you can claim it's almost anything that you want. Yeah, so it's going to be something along those lines. But like I said, on a technical level, this could be done today. They could just crank that bitrate up. Now, all of that said, even if they did crank the bitrate all the way up to the highest that Dolby Digital Plus allows, would that equal what you're hearing sounds exactly the same as what's on a disc? And the answer is not necessarily, because it isn't just the lossless versus lossy that's causing that difference. There can be differences in the mastering of what goes across the streaming service versus what comes on the disc. And very often the streaming services are slightly compressing the dynamic range because they know most people are watching this content through built-in TV speakers or a sound bar or through their phone's built-in speakers, and not through a full-blown immersive 11-speaker home theater system. There are some differences, when it's coming through your phone, it kind of knows the device it's going to, so it might be an entirely different audio track that gets sent under those circumstances. But what comes across, if you're paying for the highest tier of Netflix, and what's coming to your sound bar versus what's going to your home theater AV receiver, that's the same thing, right? You were already paying for the highest tier, you're getting the same signal because it's the same source device that you're using in either case, but they are mastering it with the knowledge that, hey, the majority of people are using built-in TV speakers or a soundbar in this case. Most people are not using a full-blown, 13, 15 speaker 4 subwoofer home theater system. So the master that you're getting from streaming could be different. So even if it were lossless, right, completely bit for bit identical, what got encoded is exactly what comes back out in your system after it's decoded. It still might not sound exactly the same as what's on the disc, because they might have made some different choices in the mastering of what the streaming service is using. So it's not quite as simple as saying, well, if it were lossless, it would sound better. No, it could be lossless for a slightly dynamically range compressed or a slightly deep bass roll off or anything like that. And you're going to be, hey, it still doesn't sound as good, even though on a technical level now it's lossless or, super duper close to lossless, whatever the case might be. So we have to oversimplify it to that degree.
Right.
But yeah, on a technical level, they absolutely could increase the bitrate right now today.
Most of the time, what I hear when I'm listening to the discs versus the streaming is just the bass. The bass gets truncated.
And the dynamic range.
That's right. So what Rob's saying is absolutely true. I mean, in all of it, they could do it with Dolby Digital. It's such a catch-all almost.
Dolby Digital Plus is amazing technology, honestly, what they've done with that thing.
Yeah. I mean, because like he said, you could really turn that up to be essentially perceptually the same.
Absolutely, yeah. No.
But the difference, of course, is that, the masters that they're sending to the... And even if you're like, oh, well, if Netflix was like, we're going to do lossless audio, and this is how we're going to do it, and then we're going to call it Netflix approved audio or something, and stamp that on there.
Yeah,
they still were sent masters with the assumption that they were going to be streamed at lower bit rates, and therefore, you would have to have new masters sent. Would be my guess. So, Sasi's mother serves on the board of trustees for the Hindu temple that she attends. They are looking to replace their drop ceiling, which is in need of repairs, but they have also been wanting to improve the way things sound when they have large gatherings. It's a very large space with a carpet that makes me seasick just looking at it.
Well, it's a low-resolution version of it, too, so that's not helping matters. But
and then you put a bunch of chairs in there or whatever. I don't know.
Yes.
I assume that there would normally be chairs in there.
There will normally be chairs and many, many people, yes.
Yeah. It's a very large space. Sasi doesn't have exact dimensions, but he sent some photos to give us a rough idea. They can fit a couple hundred folding chairs in the space with the stage at the front, and there's 6 QSC PA type speakers. But then the entire left-hand side is wide open to the actual temple, and the right wall is all windows. There's an extra opening at the back as well. There's the stage. Okay.
Yep.
And then there's that left side is the temple part.
Yeah, the left side is the actual temple, but that is wide open, to this gathering area. But they're only concerned with the gathering area. You've got 4 of the QSC PA style speakers mounted to the ceiling, and then 2 more of them are on the stage itself, standing on the stage on either end, left and right side. So yeah,
is that what I'm seeing? It looks like they're all both on the one's in the center and one. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird looking. Anyways, okay. So it's very big. First question, their contractor is trying to upsell them on acoustic ceiling tiles, but Sasi had a look at the options they were presented, and they were less than an inch thick, given the substantial increase in price over the standard half-inch thick office-style ceiling tiles. He didn't think they were worth it, and he also just didn't think they performed particularly well, since it isn't just voices, but also music that they want to sound better in the space. Sasi mentioned acoustic panels high up on the walls as an option, but they were not in favor of that, because why would they be?
Yeah.
And he also suggested they could fill the entire cavity above the T-bars with regular insulation, but they didn't particularly want to do that. So basically, we want it to sound better, but we're not willing to do anything to make that happen. Do we have any suggestions? What would we say is the quickest, easiest, but also most cost-effective way to improve the acoustics of the space? Are those specialized, expensive 3/4-inch ceiling, thick acoustic ceiling tiles actually worth it? I mean, it's a large space, and yes, that ceiling is the biggest issue. The thing I'd be worried about,
certainly the easiest place to put in acoustic treatment that will, all we're worried about here is knocking down the overall reverberation times. And once you have, 200 bodies in this space, I mean, people are relatively good acoustic absorber, diffuser type of things. So yeah, it's not as though, like he was saying, you walk in there even when it's empty and it's not like literally echoey.
Sure.
But they want the sound to be, clearer, easier to hear when they do have the large gatherings and that. So having the reverberation times under control. And I mean, some of this is just the fact that it's wide open to what looks like a space that's about equal on the other side. So you've got what could be literal echo times, like, it's not just that it's a early reflection that is slightly smearing
it's
the
not a
sound.
reflection time. It's an echo time.
It could be an outright echo. And that you can fully knock down with nothing other than an acoustic ceiling. That is doable in those type of circumstances. So, I mean, you know, he already mentioned some of the suggestions, but like, what is the fastest, most cost-effective way to treat this room? And it would be you get the rolls, the inexpensive, gigantic rolls of like R19 would be ideal because that's about 5.5, 6 inches thick. And that'll do a fantastic job. And that would go above the T-bars, because then you would want to get acoustic ceiling tiles, because you wouldn't want to get the like completely solid, super no depth to them, like just hard plastic ceiling tiles. First of all, I don't think they look that great, but second of all, those will just act as acoustic reflectors. They'll be a completely solid surface. The base will kind of get through the gaps and get up to that insulation, but you want to be absorbing across a wide frequency range. So you would want to get basic acoustic ceiling tiles, but we're talking about you can buy them easily in massive bulk, the type that go in office buildings. And those don't have to be ugly anymore. They have plenty of office building acoustic ceiling tiles that are not ugly anymore, and they're only about a 1/2 inch thick. So all on their own, they wouldn't be great for a space like this, but in combination with having some insulation above the T-bars, that would be the most cost-effective, because you can get those 1/2 inch thick office-style ceiling tiles that's as cheap as ceiling tiles get, honestly, because they're meant to be purchased in bulk, and then the big rolls of insulation are the cheapest and easiest. And the key here is, you don't have to literally cover every square inch above the T-bars with that rolled insulation. You can have gaps in between the rolls of the insulation. Like, you could do every other row of this ceiling, because you're actually exposing even more surface area when you do that. And what we're worried about is knocking down reverberation times. We're not going for like a thermal break in this case, or literally trying to blanket this place. We're trying to knock down reverberation decay times. So yeah, it could be like, it doesn't even have to be even every other row. It could be like every third row or every fourth row, just having some of that nice thick R19 roll insulation above the T-bars in strips going down this ceiling, and then having just regular 1/2 inch thick office style acoustic tiles up there. That is the cheapest and most effective, and easy to obtain in bulk.
Yeah. I mean, it's not visible. You're going to be changing the ceiling tiles anyways. It's not visible. It's not on the walls. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think if they were inferring that they had to cover every square inch up there in insulation, then they might have just been going of, labor and time and cost and being concerned about that. And I'm sure there's stuff above this ceiling.
It's a temple. You've got free labor. That's all. You always have free labor. No offense. That's what churches do. Sure. No matter where you are, they get their people to do stuff for free. Yeah. So putting insulation up there should not be a huge problem. Yeah. You're going to take down the tiles anyways.
That's right.
Right? When you take down the tiles, when you replace the tiles, you just put up insulation above it. Yeah. It's not.
And when you got those big rolls, it's not a time-intensive process. Yeah. And when you're not worried about like, oh no, I left a 1/2 inch gap between these two rolls. Yeah. Like, no, absolutely doesn't matter whatsoever. You're going to have large gaps in between the rolls. You just want some of them up there. Because the cost of getting acoustic ceiling tiles that all by themselves can do what you want to do, they have to be a minimum of 2 inches thick. And those are expensive. Like, that's going to be
probably heavy and probably need different T-bars or whatever else.
So much more expensive than what I just said with the 1/2 inch office style tiles and then some rolls of R19 insulation. That is so much cheaper. That makes
probably that solution alone is cheaper than getting the more expensive 3/4 inch ones that he was talking about.
Don't bother with that. That's no difference.
The room as it was is not an echoey mess. You can talk easily enough in the space and hear each other clearly, but it would help us and him for him to go in. Would it help us and him for him to go in there with his mic one and take some decay time measurements? And just for reference, he tried to explain the difference between acoustic treatments and soundproofing to the rest of the board of trustees. Some seemed to understand, but others definitely did not. So that's the sort of audience he would be talking to and potentially showing his measurements. Don't do measurements. Do measurements for yourself.
Oh, sure. If you just want it for your own edification, sure.
Yeah, don't do measurements, because if you have to show them the measurements to prove that you did something, it's too late.
Yeah,
you've lost.
Waterfall graphs to the audience that you just described. I mean, they might go, "Oh, that's kind of interesting," but I don't think that's the.
I like the one that's bigger.
Yeah,
the one that's prettier. It's got more colors in it. I like that one. Can we do that one again? I like that one.
I mean, you have to do before and after, but I mean, this should be readily apparent. Honestly, this should be acoustically quite easy to tell the difference. So yeah, I don't think.
So they have a massive red curtain that they can lower to visually separate the gathering space from the actual temple, but they are definitely aware that the curtain is not soundproof. They want it to be. Well, you know what? I want to make $1 million this year.
Yeah.
I want a lot of things to change in my life and in my country right now. So
I don't know, kid. I can imagine a lot.
The curtain doesn't even go the entire length of the opening. There's a gap at the back, and they want that gap to remain. All right. So I want something to be waterproof, but there's going to be holes in it.
Yeah.
The problem is some of the board members have seen advertising for soundproof curtains, so they believe that is a real thing. Is there anything he could point to them that would actually perform somewhat the way they wanted? Yeah, I mean, there are curtains that are heavy.
Yes.
Think of that. And the heavier the curtain, the more it would block. But it's not going to block bass. It's not going to block all the sound. But yes, it would create a little bit of an audio barrier, but not.
Yeah, I mean, particularly for the vocal range, you can definitely make it that on the other side of the I'll call it a flexible barrier as opposed to a curtain. You can absolutely reduce, certainly vocal range. So, like over at Acoustical Solutions, they term their sound barrier blankets. And you can dress them up so that they look like curtains, or you can sort of build your own curtains around it. But this is fiberglass insulation that is sandwiching mass-loaded vinyl. So no surprise here. Those are the materials we would expect to be being used, and it's that mass-loaded vinyl that's acting as a greater sound barrier than just fiberglass insulation would be. But they are heavy. They are not cheap. You would need oodles of them, because, I mean, this is a big red curtain that we're seeing in this image here.
It's not like you can take what you have up there now and just replace it with something else.
Right.
Because in order to move to hang something that heavy from the ceiling, it's not a normal.
And to make it like these curtains clearly get retracted. And to do that with a mass-loaded vinyl system, I mean,
it's going to take up a huge amount of space. It's
you
not going to.
You might have to re-engineer like the I-beam going across this ceiling to be able to support the weight of this thing.
So So when this is an example where you give them exactly what they want.
Sure.
Okay. So you spec out, like you talk to somebody, and I'm sure that there are, the soundproofing company or whatever can probably point you towards some actual people who do this, and then get them to spec out for you. Yeah. Hey, this is what you'll need. This is how much it'll cost. This is what renovations you'll have to make to the building. These are all the approximate costs for all that. And it's still like having a screen door in the submarine. It's
maybe a little
it will
bit
keep
better
out
than
some of
that,
the water, but not all of it. A window that won't close in a submarine. If you feel better about that.
Acoustical Solutions can help you there. Kinetics Noise Control is another one. They have the industrial flexible sound barriers that are meant to be like set up around large noise-making industrial apparatus. And I mean, it's not sound-proof, but it absolutely reduces the transmission of noise from those things that are surrounding. And those are meant to go around like big roof installations for like gigantic air conditioning units. They're meant to go around gigantic water filtration systems, that type of thing. They can do this, but it is not cheap. It is massively heavy. It will need to be engineered, and I don't think it's quite exactly what they had in mind. But
you do all that. You do a minimum amount of work, get like a basic cost for it, and then you give it to them and say, "This is how much it's going to cost to do it," and then they'll say no.
That's right,
and that's the end of it. And when they say, "Well, I was curtain this, curtain that," every single one of these people has been inside a hotel conference room, and remind them of this. And in those hotel conference rooms, they have large, almost always physical, like walls that collapse, that kind of accordion out to divide large spaces. Okay. And they've been in here and they have had those walls pulled closed because there's two things going on side by side. And you always hear what's going on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So if that physical barrier, which is fully closed across the entire space, is not keeping sound from going from one side to the other, how can a curtain that does not go from one side to the other do better than that? And if they can't, well, I don't know, I just saw that. Okay, well, I saw that the earth is flat. It doesn't mean it's true. Right. It just means that somebody said it. So there we go. They asked him if he would spec out a new speaker and audio system for them. He flat out refused that part. He does not want to end up being the de facto tech support. He also does not want to step on the toes of the person who runs the current sound system for them, and he doesn't actually see why the current QSC PA speakers need to be replaced. They seem appropriate for the application, and the person who runs it for them does so on a volunteer basis already. Good for them. But they were hoping to replace the complicated mixing board because none of them knew how to use it. So they have to rely on this one volunteer, and they want something dead simple instead. But yeah, he doesn't want to end up being responsible for it. So in the advice from us where he might be able to point them without getting himself too involved, I 100% agree with you. This is a slippery slope of you suddenly, it's a full-time job that you're not getting paid for. Garbage. And yes,
well, and he was saying he's kind of amazed at the volunteer who's doing the sound system for them right now. Like they don't really understand how much work that person does for them. It's not entirely understood how much is being done. So yeah, I mean, this is another one where like my suggestion would be if somebody wants to look into this on their own, then a company like Sweetwater would be a great place to point them so that it gets kind of off your shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Because they do this sort of thing all the time. Big PA systems for churches and venues and all types of stuff, and they can give some recommendations. Now, if they want to keep the price down, something like Behringer's Europort systems, that would be where I would start, because I'm thinking they're kind of wanting like Bluetooth support. They're going to want more than one microphone, more than one source, but the Behringer Europort systems are about as simple as you can make all of that without going to a full mixing board, which is what it sounds like they're having right now. But they're like, well, nobody besides the very kind volunteer who's running the system for it knows how to use that system. The Behringer Europort is, I'm not going to say it's dead. Like, it can't be dead simple when you're dealing with more than one microphone, more than one sound source. There's no such thing as like so simple that there's literally no way to mess it up. Like, you're dealing with more than one source coming out of more than one speaker. There's going to be a way to potentially mess that up, but that's about as simple as it can be made and support something like, hey, I just want to play the background music off of my iPhone and I can do that over Bluetooth. So yeah, I would point them to Sweetwater. I would mention Behringer as something that they could ask about. But other than that, yeah, I don't think I'd get myself any more involved than that. I think you're on the right track there of trying to back off and not step on the toes of the person who's very kindly doing this for them already.
All right. John has been using an Outlaw audio model 976 Pre-Pro for the past 6 years. Out of nowhere, the video pass-through of his HDMI switching has totally failed. And it's really weird. The audio still works, and you can bring up the on-screen menu, but he's tried every HDMI source he uses with every HDMI cable into every HDMI input, and the video signal simply isn't getting through any of them. Mm-hmm. There is some sort of flutter of a video signal that attempts to show itself on the screen for like 2 seconds every 5 minutes or so, but no actual image, and certainly not stable. He has been making some video output settings changes in his new Apple TV 4K recently, but no setting changes in his Outlaw Pre-Pro. So is there anything he can do? Is it possible to buy a replacement HDMI board and install it himself?
No. That one's out. Not going to happen.
If not, since the HDMI audio is still working, for some reason, could he at least make use of his Apple TV 4K by getting an inexpensive 2-in, 1-out HDMI splitter?
1 in, 2 out.
I'm saying 1 in, 2 out. HDMI splitter and sending the video signals directly to the TV while sending the audio to his Pre-Pro.
Yeah, that could be done.
He found a Fossman, which is not Fossy, but Fossman bi-directional switch for $16. That certainly is going to be a winner there. $16. How do they make it for $16? How do they do it? I mean, what kind of crazy unpaid child labor are they using to assemble something that has an HDMI bi-directional switch for $16? or an Orei splitter duplicator for $45. Would either of those work? There's also an Orei model with audio extraction for $60. Would that one be necessary in his case? I've been making changes on my thing, and now it doesn't work anymore, but it's definitely not the changes I made on my thing. I'm not saying that.
I mean, he didn't change his other sources.
Right.
And he tried a bunch. And he's had this pre-pro for 6 years, and he's been unplugging and plugging things in recently. Like the possibility of an HDMI board failure is definitely like HDMI boards fail rather frequently. They're kind of fragile things. We wish they weren't as fragile as they are, and it's hilarious when you see the amount of heat sinking that Denon has put on their latest. Once it's like there's more heat sinking on the HDMI board than there is on their amplifiers. That might be a slight exaggeration, but not by that much. So yeah, the possibility of this being an HDMI board problem is. I'm not going to dismiss that out of hand. It could definitely be that. So, barring we'll
factory reset my Apple TV 4K.
Yeah, you can factory reset the Outlaw as well. And yeah, the weirdness is that the on-screen display does show up, which suggests that it isn't the output, right? It suggests that it's not the monitor out. It suggests that it's something to do with the HDMI inputs, and more likely than the inputs themselves, the switching between those inputs that then gets routed to that monitor output. Because if the on-screen display shows up, then the monitor output seems to be working okay. So just to answer that first part about these, 1 in, 2 out splitters, you could do that because this is a case where everything that the Apple TV 4K is outputting is supported by both the TV natively and your pre-pro natively. Your pre-pro is HDMI 2.0. Your TV technically has HDMI 2.1, but there's nothing coming out of the Apple TV 4K that HDMI 2.0 cannot handle. So that means you can send the identical signal to both of these devices. This isn't like having one 1080p projector and one 4K monitor and trying to get it to show, 4K on the 4K monitor, but only 1080p on the 1080p television, and you're trying to send two different signals. This is like, no, the identical signal can go to both of these devices without there being a clash and a lowest common denominator type of problem. So yeah, a basic 1 in, 2 out splitter can work. Now that Fossman bidirectional switch that he linked to, that is a switch. That is, if I put one source in and I connect two displays, I can route it to either display, but not both simultaneously. So that is not what you want. You want both devices getting the signal simultaneously. You don't really need the Orei one that has audio extraction because you can feed HDMI to both. So you really just need one HDMI in, 2 duplicated HDMI outs. So that $45 Orei splitter is the one to get. And that should function all right for the time being.
Right. He did try emailing Outlaw Audio, and they responded quickly with a suggestion to first try an $8 tube of squeeze-on deoxidizer that he's supposed to apply to the ends of his HDMI cables and then plug and unplug them into the pre-pros ports a bunch of time to clean the contacts. They specifically say to use a spray-on contact cleaner because those usually leave a residue that his squeeze-on deoxidizer supposedly does not. Is this really worth a try, or to be total crapshoot with only guarantee being he'll be out $8 plus shipping? I mean, is it going to be every single input on your? If the board's really hasn't really failed, it would mean that every single input got dirty at the same time. Basically.
I know. From what he described of the troubleshooting he already did, it sounds a bit unlikely. Now, if it were the output, right? If it were the monitor out, which is entirely possible, then yeah, because like you remember back like the NES and the SNES cartridges, and like the whole thing of blowing on the cartridge or just plugging and unplugging them a bunch of times. Like, yeah, the contacts on friction fit metal devices absolutely can get some dirt or corrosion or all types of things on them, and sometimes all it takes is a bit of a cleaning and they work again. So I'm not going to say like it'd be a total waste to even try this thing, but if it really is the troubleshooting that you mentioned, it seems a bit unlikely. The other possibility, again, this would be more if it's the monitor out that's having a problem, is it's quite common for HDMI ports, like the physical port I'm talking about, to become loose over over time. That can be simply from the heating and cooling cycles that happen. It can also be from, most of our HDMI cables, gravity is pulling them down a little bit, and over the course of 6 years, that port just gets a little bit loose. And there are 19 teeny tiny little connections on that plug, and if a couple of them are just not making good contact anymore, that can cause issues like this, where there's partial signal getting through, but part of the signal fails, and that can happen like this. So sometimes all it takes is a pair of needle nose pliers, and you slightly tighten the metal portions of the port. Sometimes that's all it takes to fix that. But if it's more than that, like any basic repair shop can replace just an HDMI port. That's a quick, it's not even a solder. It's like, a heat gun type of thing.
Right.
A hot air blower that just desolders the connection enough. You pull it off, you put on a new port, and sometimes that's all it takes. So, but all of that would be much more likely if the monitor out was the only thing having a problem. And the fact that the on-screen display shows up no problem, it makes me think there's something on the board in the switching that's the real culprit here.
Any advice on how to find a reliable, reasonably priced electronics repair shop that is local to him? He's in South Carolina. No.
Like I would ask Outlaw Audio if they have a list of authorized repair places. Other than that, it is a bit of a crapshoot, because it's like, well, Google Maps and user reviews, it's not super reliable, but unfortunately, it's not like I have a Rolodex of places I know and trust. So,
right. When the HDMI video pass-through problems first began, he didn't have much choice other than to plug his Apple TV 4K directly into his TCL R635 TV for the time being, and then use the TV's optical output to send that audio signal to his Outlaw Pre-Pro that way. But the sound stutters from time to time with things hooked up that way. Any idea if that's a common issue, or might that be a sign of yet another problem with his Outlaw Pre-Pro? I don't see how that has anything to do with your Outlaw Pre-Pro.
I think the more likely thing here is, because we know he has an NVIDIA Shield, we know he has an Apple TV 4K, and he was running it via HDMI before, so we had it in the automatic audio output setting, which does a great job via HDMI. But when you route it to the TV directly and then use the TV's optical audio output to go back downstream to your Pre-Pro or AV receiver, best thing to do is to set your source device, your NVIDIA Shield, your Apple TV 4K, or your disc player or your cable box, whatever you might have, set it to always output Dolby Digital 5.1. Have the source device always output nothing but Dolby Digital 5.1, because it's usually when there's been a signal format change, which can be as simple as I started pressing the buttons on my remote and it wants to make the little ding sounds, or the little clicky sounds as I navigate around pressing on the remote, and that requires an audio format change back to everything being decoded inside of the device so that it can mux together the PCM and then put it in whatever container it sends out. It's like all that stuff messes up that HDMI into the TV converting it to optical and then sending it back to your AV receiver, whereas if you just have the source device always output Dolby Digital 5.1, that typically solves this issue. And your optical port is never going to do better than Dolby Digital 5.1, so it's fine to do it that way.
Putting aside his audio woes for a second, he dialed in custom picture settings on his TCL R635 TV for both SDR and HDR10. But now that he's got an Apple TV 4K, he's using Dolby Vision for the first time. Does he need to make any picture settings adjustments that are specific to Dolby Vision? Should you change any default settings for backlight, brightness, contrast, or anything else when this TV goes into Dolby Vision mode? Ertings mentions HDR settings, and they just say to start with your choice of SDR preset mode, adjust that to their recommended settings, and then leave HDR alone, since the TCL R635 will stay in the same picture mode, but automatically switch to HDR specific version of it. Mm-hmm. But they don't mention Dolby Vision specifically. Mm-hmm. So is it the same case there? Just leave the default Dolby Vision settings alone. My first question back to you would be, are you noticing that there's a problem in this?
Because that can be a bit tough, though.
Yeah.
Because
if he's doing Dolby Vision, because he's already been seeing HDR before.
Right, HDR10, yeah.
Yeah. And Dolby Vision should look, in theory, better. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily, but in theory, better. And I would wonder if you're noticing any problems. And a lot of times with these TVs, unfortunately, you can't actually change the settings within these different video modes unless that video signal's going through.
Yeah, it has to be active. That is the case. Yeah.
For you to do
Although
it.
with an Apple TV 4K, that's easy because you can set it to just always output Dolby Vision no matter what. Like just the menu is now coming out in Dolby Vision, so that's quite easy to make your TV activate it. And by and large, this is a case of you pretty much leave it alone, but there is a choice because there's a Dolby Vision Dark and a Dolby Vision Bright, or in the TCL they might have named it Day and Night or Home and something else, but there's basically a dark version and a bright version. The dark version is accurate by default to the Dolby Vision standards, but that is making the assumption that you're viewing in a dark room. So that's why the Dolby Vision Bright mode exists, because they know people aren't always necessarily watching in a dark room, and shadow detail can be very difficult to make out in the Dolby Vision Dark mode if you're in a well-lit room. The Dolby Vision Bright mode, unfortunately, activates like some motion smoothing and some dynamic contrast that goes along with it. So those would be the things that you'd want to turn off if you've chosen to use the Dolby Vision Bright mode. The Dolby Vision Dark mode you can pretty much leave alone. If you're watching in a dark room, everything is the way it should be.
Okay.
Yeah, but as far as like the brightness and contrast settings, the colors setting, the sharpness setting, any of that, no, that's all fine. You leave it alone. It would only be the motion smoothing and the dynamic contrast that might be active if you've chosen the Dolby Vision Bright version.
It seems like you always have to go and double check those settings whenever you get into a new mode. They're like, "Are you sure?" Yeah. I know you've turned it off for every other single setting we've done on this TV, but maybe for Dolby Vision, what you really want is motion interpolation.
I mean, if you wanted it brighter, then you must want it to look weird at the same time.
Curt, the majority of Curt's left wall in his enclosed theater room is a closet and utility space that's covered by louvered doors, which make noise. They will absolutely make noise. As far as the subwoofers are concerned, is the total space behind those louvered doors still part of the home theater room with all that air needing to be pressurized? Or are those louvered doors closed off enough to be considered walls by his subs? Or is it something in between? He's trying to figure out where his actual midpoints are on his front and back walls to help him decide on subwoofer placement. And there's also a curtain covering some of the louvered doors towards the front of the room. So how does all that impact his bass, acoustically speaking? As if they were not there.
Predominantly, yeah. I mean, super technically, I guess you could say it's somewhere slightly in between wide open and closed off, but you're much closer to it being like those louvered doors are just simply not there when it comes to bass. They are going right through those louvered doors, pretty close to them not being there at all, acoustically speaking. So yes, if you're trying to figure out measurement-wise by the dimensions of your room, what is the actual midpoint of my front wall, acoustically speaking, not visually speaking, pretend that louvered closet is not there and calculate based on that. The curtain also doesn't count. The bass does not care that the curtain is over part of that wall. It is going right through that curtain when it comes to bass.
Oh, yeah, that curtain definitely doesn't count. Unless you get the kind of curtain that we suggested for Sasi.
It is not that type.
Infinite Gary. Will Rob's latest water leak problems convince him to move now? He asks.
I mean, if it comes with a whole bunch of money attached to it, which it is not doing.
And if he gets a larger place with a larger room to set up his bigger home theater, would Rob expand his speaker count all the way up to 9.4.6, maybe more? And would Rob stick with using an OLED TV, or we switch over to a much larger projection screen? Or maybe you got into some money, son. Or maybe have both by using a motorized projection screen that can come down in front of the OLED. Yeah, I mean, Rob is going to. Apparently, you're in money. You got the money. So, I
mean, realistically, I am kind of keeping an eye on townhouses and stuff like that. It actually isn't completely out of the question that I don't think it'll be the near future, but maybe not necessarily ages and ages. So, yeah, I might be considering a townhouse at some point. I definitely, when I am looking at townhouses on Realtor.ca, I am always looking for the floor plan and trying to figure out, hey, where would the home theater go? And thankfully, some of the places they're built with, like, there is a room under the garage with nice thick walls. So even if you have neighbors on one side or even both sides, there's sometimes that room under there that would not be too bad of a choice. So
The dog has let herself out.
That'll work. If I have a room that is large enough to support it, yeah, I'd go all the way up to 9.4.6. Why would I buy? And I'm going to reveal the secret now. It's going to be out in public for everyone who has been wondering but has never gone back to listen to the very end of the episodes that we referenced after the outro music. I have a Denon A1H. You know, that's the one that can do 9.4.6. So why else would I have bought such a thing unless I had designs on maybe one day doing a 9.4.6 setup? Certainly that's under consideration. Would I stick with solely an OLED TV? Well, here's where I'm going to say there is a possibility, because some of these rooms that I'm looking at where they have the nice thick-walled room that's under the garage, they're about 17 by 18 in general. Those rooms that are down there, that's big enough that I could be considering, larger than even an 83-inch OLED, which is about as large as I would ever go. I can't afford the 97-inch OLED. That's not happening. But I might very well consider a 98-inch TCL QM8, or even the 115-inch if it comes down a bit in price. Something up around $10,000 is not completely out of the question. $20,000 is too much. I wouldn't be able to do that. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to go to projection. That's not really in my plans or in the future. But yeah, it might not be OLED because price for size. 98-inch TCL is certainly something I would consider.
Cut it out.
He's not even talking to me, folks. He's talking to the dog if you're audio-only version. I mean, he might have been talking to me a bit because it would be deserved, but that was mostly directed at the doggo.
All right. So he was reading about how Samsung is increasing its investment in developing electroluminescent quantum dot display technology. TCL has been working on QDEL too. And Sharp has actually shown some of the largest prototype QDEL displays at various trade shows. So the race is on. I don't know if it's a race, but it's something. But Gary wants to know, will QDEL be yet another sample and hold type of display? If so, will it still have the same sort of motion blur that he sees when watching his OLED TVs, but not his plasma or DLP displays? So for those of you that don't quite understand what he's talking about here, the problem with LEDs historically has been the fact that the display puts up the image, and then when the next panel, frame comes up, it switches over. And when it switches over, there's our brain can kind of overlap the two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, there's a little distinction just in the wording to be made. Because with LCD displays, they have two types of blur. They have motion blur that Gary mentioned. Now that is the first frame is supposed to transition to the second frame, but the LCD, the liquid crystals themselves, are not quite fast enough, particularly at today's really high refresh rates, that there is a bit of a blur in the display itself between frame 1 and frame 2, and then from frame 2 to frame 3. There's a little bit of a blur in the display itself, and that we would consider true motion blur. There's an object moving fast enough in the video image that it has changed position from frame to frame, and there's this ghost little bit of the first frame still there when the second frame shows up because the display technology itself can't actually change entirely fast enough, and that is true motion blur. But OLEDs, for example, and quantum dots all by themselves, if the light you're seeing is actually from the quantum dot and not coming through an LCD layer, these emissive displays like OLEDs and quantum dots, they can refresh so quickly that there is absolutely no ghosting of that first frame still being shown by the display itself. When it gets to the second frame, they can update very nearly instantaneously, faster than our eye could ever perceive. But with sample and hold, where it's the first frame is there, and then the second frame is there, and there's no black interstitial in between or ramping up in brightness and ramping down in brightness as you go from frame 1 to frame 2 and so forth. If it's just sample and hold, frame 1 there the entire time, now frame 2 there the entire time, that is technically called persistence blur. That is the display if you shoot it with a super high frame rate camera and you show it in super slow motion, it's like the display was doing exactly what the signal said it to do. There's no blur in the display itself. So it's not motion blur. It's not display blur. But our brain perceives an after image of frame 1 going into frame 2. So that is persistence blur, just to get the terminology exactly right. Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that with displays like plasma or CRTs, it flashes an image up on the screen.
Yeah.
Right. And that's sometimes right at the end of the plasma lifespan, they were trying to keep up with the LCD terminology, because LCD was going, we're at
240 hertz, 480 hertz.
Yeah, 240, 480. They kept increasing the number, and Plasma was like, well, I mean, technically we're at 666 hertz, which I don't know that was a good number, or even one that they actually used, but they should have. And what happens is it just flashes it up there very, very quickly. But because it's just a flash, and then there's a darkness, and then another flash, and then a darkness, and another flash and darkness, your brain automatically puts that all together as smooth motion.
And with CRT, again, if you shoot it with super high frame rate camera and show it super slow motion, it's actually like drawing the image line by line.
Yes.
There's a kind of significant amount of the screen is black most of the time, but that persistence blur that is due to our brain, it puts together these lines that are being drawn, and we see one contiguous image, but that is not what the display was actually making in every single individual moment. That's going faster than our brain and our eye brain system can refresh.
So what Gary is wondering is if these new QDELs would be that sample and hold type of display, or is it going to be more of that flash where your brain will put it together, and you won't have to worry about that your brain creating some blur that isn't actually there. I would assume that it's just going to be a sample and hold like all the rest of them.
Well, I mean, this is what's interesting, because similar to OLED, right, where what you're seeing is the light is being emitted by the thing itself. It's not going through a layer that has to transition like liquid crystal or something like that. You can make an OLED display that is flashing or pulse width modulation, like, because it can light up and go back to blackness so very, very quickly. It's very much like the old electron beam. You could draw scan lines on an OLED display. Like, on a technical level, there's not really a reason you couldn't do that. You could do that with a quantum dot electroluminescent display as well. But the issue there is, if you do that, you don't get maximum light output. You get maximum light output by sampling and holding, where you put up the full brightness image, the entire screen, hold it there for as long as possible, and then transition to the next image. Because we had OLED displays, we still have OLED displays that can insert a black frame in between each image frame. You can turn that on. You'll notice as soon as you turn that on, your image dims. Everything looks dimmer. You get rid of the persistence blur by having these black frames inserted, but that lowers your perception of the image brightness. So that is absolutely a trade-off, and they are going to choose to make the image look as bright as possible. I'm not predicting there is going to be any of these TV electronics companies that are going to choose to make their image look dimmer so that you don't have as much persistence blur. That is not what people are complaining about, the vast majority. They will always take the brighter image. So yes, realistically speaking, QDEL is going to be sample and hold.
Yes. So obviously, the farther away you sit from the screen, the larger the TV screen size you're going to want, unless you are most people in the United States, where they just want the next larger size from the last TV they had, regardless of their seating
There's
distance.
that too, yeah.
He knows that for him personally, if he's looking at a 65-inch TV, he prefers the way it looks to him from 8 feet away. Maybe even a little further, which is too far away. But to be honest, 8 feet is about the closest he likes to sit from a 65-inch TV. Is there a relationship between those figures in terms of there being a sweet spot for the resolution of that TV? Does 4K resolution have a sweet spot in that way? Or is it more of a matter of just how much of your peripheral vision you want to be involved once you get to 4K resolution? Does it all scale linearly? For example, is sitting 7 feet away from a 55-inch TV the same as sitting 8 feet away from a 65-inch TV? In terms of whether or not the resolution makes a visible difference? Or does the screen size itself sort of demand a certain resolution more or less regardless of how far away you're sitting from it? So once you can't see pixels, You can't. I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than once you can't see pixels, you can't not see them any more than you're not already seeing them,
so there's a slight differentiation there because, like, to get a screen door effect, right? So I'm looking at a full white screen, but I'm close enough to that screen, and that screen is low enough in resolution with a wide enough pixel pitch that a full white screen, I can see individual pixels because it looks like I'm looking through a screen door. That is significantly different from what I'm showing on screen is a row of white pixels followed by a row of black pixels followed by a row of white, black, alternating like that. Because there, if you're saying, well, if I actually want to be close enough to see that detail, to see that this is a stripe of 1 pixel wide white followed by a stripe of 1 pixel wide black, that is significantly different from the entire screen is white and I can still see the pixels in a screen door effect type of thing. Our visual acuity this is very approximate, but it's approximately you need a gap between 2 light sources, so 2 little white lights. You need a gap between them of 1 arc minute, which is 1/60th of a degree. In order for us to see these 2 white lights as 2 white lights and not just a single white light joined together, there needs to be a gap between them of 1/60th of a degree. Now, however close or far away that is from you, it's this 1/60th of a degree gap for us to be able to say, oh, that's actually 2 separate little white lights and not just 1 white light blended together. If you don't have a 60th of a degree between them, our brain will just blend it together and you'll see 1 slightly larger white light instead of 2 separate lights. So if we're getting images, and these would only be test signal images that are a single pixel line followed by a single pixel black line followed by a single pixel white line, and you're actually trying to discern that, you would have to sit so that the width of a 4K resolution screen, 3840 by 2160, you'd have to sit so that that takes up 64 degrees of your field of view. Whereas 1080p, 1920 by 1080 resolution, you'd have to sit with that taking up 32 degrees of your field of view. I mean, that's really close to the SMPTE recommendation of how far away you're supposed to sit from an HD TV. They're basically sit close enough to your 1080p TV, 1920 by 1080p TV, sit close enough that you can pretty darn come close to seeing single lines of pixels as long as it's alternating white, black, white, black. In other words, putting a 60th of a degree between the 2 white lines. So yeah, to do that at 4K resolution, regardless of the screen size, right? So if you're far enough away from a big enough screen, it's still going to look the same. It's still talking about an angle in your field of view. So it isn't that just because the screen is physically larger, it has to be higher resolution. If you're far enough away from it, you're never going to notice that those lines are separated by a black line in between them. But yeah, you have to get up to 64 degrees on a 4K display. That is a huge field of view. That is sitting really, really close to any sort of display. And therefore, any real world content is not trying to get you to discern one line of pixels from another line of pixels. It's thicker than that when they want you to see the gap between them. The idea is you're never going to see individual pixels. It's going to be up to the image they want you to see. It's not going to be up to a limitation of the display technology. So in that sense, it's a good thing that you're never going to be able to tell one line from another unless you're closer than what creates a 64-degree field of view.
Yeah. All right, that's the end of him.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, we're on to Henry.
Okay. Henry bought one of Sony's newest OLED TV models, a Bravia 8, back in August of last year. Within the first 3 days, he exchanged it at Best Buy since the TV speakers would often produce a popping and crackling type sound. It seemed it would often occur right when he would change a TV channel or when a show would go to commercials or whenever the video signal changed coming from his Apple TV 4K, but it wouldn't happen literally every time. It was intermittent. So it was impossible to nail down a consistently repeatable cause and effect. Anyways, the new Bravia 8 TV that he got in exchange seemed to work fine until a month ago. It started having random audio dropouts, and there didn't seem to be any way to predict when an audio dropout would happen. He contacted Sony. After some troubleshooting, they arranged for a local service repair shop to send in a technician to replace the motherboard and some other piece inside the TV.
You didn't remember exactly what it was.
That seemed to fix things for 1 week. Then the audio dropout started happening again, and when he contacted Sony again, they wanted him to provide a video recording to demonstrate exactly what happens during one of these audio dropouts. How is he supposed to do that? He's tried to explain to them several times that he that the audio dropouts are seemingly totally random. That's a lot of Y's words. One could happen at any time, but he can't reliably make one happen on command. So how is he supposed to capture video footage of a random audio dropout as it happens when it only lasts a couple of seconds and then goes away, sometimes for a fairly long time? Do we have any other suggestions that might help him in the situation? Well, I mean, the number one suggestion is to not use a TV speakers. Let's be honest. This is the wrong podcast for that.
Yeah, that's...
I don't want to be that guy because a lot of times that's, well, why are you even using that piece of crap? I don't want to be that guy. If you have to use the TV speakers for whatever reason, sure, you certainly want them to work.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I hear stuff like this happen, it's not necessarily a problem with the one device. There's something else going on that's causing this, like a volume change or a volume mismatch between one thing and another. Not necessarily volume, but like, as it's switching formats or whatever, it's kind of like those black screens that we see in certain models as they change resolution or change the number of hertz or whatever, the frame rate, and all of that. You'll see like a black screen. People are like, it's broken. It's not broken. It's just kind of how it reacts to that sort of thing. So what you're describing here is that, as your TV is adapting to the new signal, it gives you a bit of a pop. And that shouldn't happen.
Maybe, though, because, I mean, it sounds like he's just watching something and the audio drops out for a moment. And he's had...
That's not what he said, though, is it?
Well, yeah, not the
he
first
said it
one.
seemed to occur right when he would change a TV channel
that
when the show would go to commercials.
That one got replaced, and this new one is just having audio dropouts seemingly totally at random. Yeah, so I mean, it seems like with this many things.
What is he connected to? That's the real question. I guess.
We don't know that either.
That would be that. I mean, that would be the culprit for me, is because at least I would think that the problem might not be the TV itself; it might be the source that you're using. But he might just be using the internal apps. In which case, it's the TV again. And
I mean, this could be another one because he mentioned an Apple TV 4K. If you are just using the TV's built-in speakers, there's not much reason to have the Apple TV 4K output something other than Dolby Digital 5.1. Although I know that the Bravia 8 technically supports Atmos, so maybe he's trying to do that. But I mean, it's not real Atmos, obviously, coming from the TV's built-in speakers. So I mean, this is one where you could try, set your Apple TV 4K to only ever output Dolby Digital, rather than auto where it's trying to switch between audio formats. If that eliminates the problem, then it sort of indicates that maybe it's something in the decoding or the switching between decoders that's causing the audio dropouts more than, the speakers just have a loose wire, something type of thing. But given that, Sony is willing to maybe do another repair or a replacement under warranty because he's still, this is brand new, to do that, but they want to have this sort of video evidence. I mean, all I can think of doing is you set up a camera on a tripod or a stand. Every time you watch TV, you have the video rolling, and then you just clip out that little clip. I mean, if you're recording on your phone, every phone can do very basic video editing where you just pull out the little clip and you send that off to Sony. I mean, you would have to just have it's like a documentary filmmaker who's out in the wilderness trying to catch the little animal that comes out of its hole. You can't wait to react to it. You just have to have the camera running the whole time, and then you edit out the little portion you want to send. That's about the only way to do that.
I mean, I would set up a tripod basically, and I might go in there and just change channels and shift, change the different apps, do different things until you hear it. And it shouldn't, I mean, I would imagine it wouldn't take that long, but maybe it takes a long time. But you're going to have to, that's the only way that you can
do it.
But
if you're still within the exchange window, I might consider just changing to a different OLED TV. Who knows? You get burned by a particular model, and it's a brand new model this many times, and wonky production run, bad luck. Yeah,
who knows? I wouldn't necessarily blame Sony if this was if this was a systemic thing, you would hear about it. You wouldn't be the only person complaining. And I don't know, maybe there are.
He might not be. Might be
so if it's a large thing, then then you definitely should ditch the TV and get something else. Dazz. So first up, Dazz wanted to share his recent tale of frustration. Last year, his wife Drea and her youngest sister discovered that right after Black Friday and Cyber Monday, there's Travel Tuesday when lots of travel agents offer crazy deals on travel packages. They booked a cruise, but then Dazz and Drea pretty much forgot about it since they've been so focused on home renovations and parenting. But his sister-in-law reminded them just in time that the cruise was last week, so they hastily arranged for family and friends to look after their controlled chaos while they were away, and they took a much-needed vacation. They were pleasantly surprised when they entered their cabin. It was snazzy, and Dazz was impressed that everything from the lights to the curtains and to the TV and more was all controlled by a tablet via either a Control4 or a Crestron system. And while they didn't go on a cruise vacation to watch TV in their cabin, he was kind of excited to scratch one or two movies he's been meaning to see off his list, and the cabin's in-room entertainment system seemed like it might actually be up to the task. But then disappointment set in. The TV is mounted to a decorative wall behind it and could not be budged. I wonder why. And there was no way to reach any of the TV's physical buttons or inputs, and the tablet and remote were both locked out from accessing any of the TV settings. The TV's picture mode was clearly set to some sort of eco mode with fluctuating light levels. You could almost forgive that setting if it honestly saved power, but it also produced inaccurate colors. And there was so much image processing going on that everything in the foreground looked extra fake while standing in front of a cardboard background. Furthermore, there was motion smoothing turned on, of course, and absolutely no way to turn it off. So no new movies were watched, and the most you could stand to use the TV was for background noise. Such a shame. Doing nothing else but putting the TV into its default cinema mode before mounting it and locking out the controls could have gone such a long way. And this isn't unique to cruise ships, right? Any way to encourage the whole hospitality market to do better? Yeah, because we have so much influence. You'd be surprised what you can get done at in hotels and stuff. Because I have taken, this was many years ago. Mm-hmm. I have taken video game systems to hotels and been like, hey, I want to plug this thing in, mm-hmm. and I can't get to the back of the TV, and they'll send a maintenance person out, and they'll do whatever. I wonder if you had called or contacted the ship's crew and said, "Hey, this TV looks terrible. Can you adjust the settings, or can I adjust the settings? Can you give me access to the settings so I can adjust this thing?" What they would have said, because I imagine that they would have said yes.
Yeah, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't foresee them taking a single moment's extra time to do anything other than put the TV in exactly the default mode. And these TVs modes do come specifically for the hospitality industry with these locked out controls and that type of thing. The chance that they're going to make any changes from default when they install it is absolutely zero, and I don't expect that to ever change. But yes, it is good to ask. The other thing is sometimes you can still bring a universal remote along with you, a programmable one. It'd be like a Sofa Baton U2 these days, along with your phone, because you can do that all via Bluetooth as long as you have an internet connection. And very often you can stumble upon a set of IR commands that do function and let you at least change the darn thing to cinema mode, like you say.
Yeah. So now for his big topic this week. We've talked about what the teens want when it comes to home theater setups of their own, at least according to his own sample size of his kids and their friends, which is clearly representative. A couple of his kids are leaders in their various school bands, marching band, jazz band, and others, and because of that, they've had lots of bandmate friends over to their house, where lots of them have enjoyed Dazz's basement home theater. Mm-hmm. Several of them have said that they'd like to convince their parents to add home theater setup like Dazz's to their homes, but those darn fireplaces always seem to get in the way of any giant projector screen setups. Nobody needs a giant fireplace in Georgia, but they all have them. It was cold like 3 days. It snowed.
Right, yeah.
The audio side of things, though, he's been able to talk to a few other parents about that. He's managed to convince a few of them to get acoustic art panels, and being able to show them subwoofers that are tall rather than giant boxy boxes has started to sway several of them over to our side. Fix the room first and work from the bottom up, right? He's kind of liking that approach of ours. And so then, as far as speakers, he's basically been able to group what these parents are interested in into three broad categories. They either want speakers that don't take up any space, especially floor space, so in-wall or on-wall is one category for sure, mm-hmm. or they're willing to see speakers, but they want them to be compact and easy to place into things like built-in shelves, mm-hmm. or they might actually be willing to have full-size speakers, but they need to look pretty and match the furniture they already own. Nobody wants big, plain black boxes, at least not from what he's been able to gather. And as far as what people are willing to spend, it's a fairly large range, quite different from person to person. So what would he would love to have our help with is compiling a set of go-to recommendations that you can easily suggest for any of the 3 speaker categories. Oh my God. Have you not listened to the podcast? I mean, it's not like we recommend the same things over and over and over again. It's like, it's ludicrous.
Spoiler alert, you're not going to hear anything I'm going to say now that is like, whoa, never heard Rob mention that
Rob's
before.
never mentioned that one before. It probably won't be a sin because he never talks about a sin. He'd love to have 9 go-to recommendations. So here are the 9, I guess. In walls and on walls, compact but capable, full size but pretty, and then I guess on wall and in walls are together. Compact but capable are together, and full size but pretty are together, and then low, middle, and high price points for each. What's the list going to be? I mean, obviously, I can let Rob answer all this while I go see what's going on with my wife, and then maybe grab something else. How much time we have left? We're almost done, anyways.
We're getting
this is going to be the last question.
We got about 10 minutes left. Well, we might be able to hit one more after this, real quick.
But yeah, as far as the one brand that I would point to for most people, especially that when they're looking for pretty and can hit at least the middle and full-sized ones, is KEF. I think KEF, as a general rule, is just the kind of, they have enough range in how their speakers look, and then they are also, it's something about the tweeter on top of the woofer that people don't like. You know, it looks like, to me, I think they think it looks like a speaker, and they want it not to look like a speaker. So a KEF speaker with a concentric driver tweeter arrangement,
embedded in the mid-range.
I just think that people think that looks better.
And plus, it's like the symmetry of it. Because if they do have other woofers there, you know, above and below that, and it's like, everything looks very symmetrical. Very clean.
I think that people like that. You know, and as far as, you know, the compact, I know this is not what you are asking for, but I would recommend it anyways, is NHTs, is that it?
Okay.
The little black boxes.
The Super Zeros?
The Super Zeros.
Sure.
Those specifically because you're like, okay, listen, I know you said you didn't want black boxes, but these really do disappear into like a shadow. So if you're going to put it someplace in your room, and they look enough like a Bose that people somehow are okay with it.
Okay.
But that's sort of, you know, where I would go. And then, you know, because unfortunately, like people like SVS, which I love.
Sure.
You know, it's just black boxes.
I mean, it's a little bit more for the home theater crowd.
Yeah, it really is. And that's fine.
Like where we're going for, hey, we want really good performance at affordable prices with excellent service. And it's like, okay, check in those boxes. But is it like, these look like furniture? Pretty tough to claim that they look like furniture. Are they really notably compact? Nope, definitely not notably compact.
Right. The thing about KEF, though, is that you can often find their offerings that look like their other offerings, but they're powered. So suddenly you're like getting rid of the AV receiver if you're just going for stereo. Yeah. And you can plug them directly into the TV.
Well, yeah, like if you can afford them, this would be in the high price range category, but you can look at like the LS60 towers, right? Now, the LS50s, they're going to be on my list for higher price range, but reasonably compact. And then you can get like a wide variety of colors of them. But then those LS60 towers, like they're expensive, but if you are talking to someone in the high price range, but they want something that's like not just looks nice, but like is visually interesting to look at, like actually acts as kind of decoration along with being a speaker. Like those LS60s, if they can afford them, that can definitely be in there. Yeah, KEF covers a lot of bases because if you're talking traditional speakers, but nice clean looks and then clean finish options, like the basic Q series, right? The Q series, now the Q series Meta, but you know, they come in black, they come in white, they come in the walnut finish, and now they even have like this kind of funky blue, almost pearlescent type of finish option available. Not on, I think, every single one of the models, but that is an available option in there. So that covers a lot of bases. Plus, they've introduced an on-wall model that's part of the Q series, and then they have Q series in-wall models as well. So I'm going to consider all of that, like KEF Q series can cover pretty much all of these, except they're not really the compact, but they can cover the in-walls, they can cover the on-walls, and they can cover the full-size speakers, all at what I would consider sort of like the mid price category. I think the KEF Q series works across all of those branches. So, I mean, keeping KEF in your suggestion pile is definitely an easy recommendation. Then if you want to go more towards the high price range, I mean, KEF has you covered there too, because they got their R series, right, which is stepping everything up, and still a variety of finish options for their full-size speakers, and then in-wall options in the R series as well. And then you can go all the way up to the reference series, their THX reference series, their Blade and their Muon series if you want the prices to go crazy. So KEF covers a lot of bases that you talked about. So let's look at what KEF doesn't cover, which is I don't think they have anything I would call downright low price. I think even, the Q series I would consider sort of mid-priced. So let's consider, in-walls and on-walls at the low price point. I mean, I'm going to point you to RSL. For the in-wall solution. I wish HSU's in-wall speakers were still around, but they're not. So RSL is like my next choice for in-wall speakers. There's nothing else I could really point to that's at that price point and then still performs really well. There are cheap in-wall speakers, but they really sound crappy. So RSL, I think, kind of takes the cake for low price for in-wall series. Then if we're still sticking with in-walls and on-walls, aside from KEF, RBH, we've got to consider RBH, that Impression series, which is available in both black and white, and with a choice of grill colors as well. So they have the on-wall Impression series models, which can also be installed in wall. They already come fully sealed, which I really, really like. You don't have to worry about separate backer boxes. Those ones, they don't have like a dog leg attachment, although RBH has said if you want to pay extra, they'll custom attach dog legs to their Impression series on walls to make them into in walls if you really want to do that. But you could also just put a little bit of wood blocking in there and do it that way. So they can be in walls or on walls, but they're designed as on walls. And then if we're going to the higher price points for like in walls and on walls, I already mentioned, KEF with their higher end in wall series. But here's where I'm going to recommend Ascend, because that Sierra Luna series, they are on wall speakers.
Talk about them.
I know. They are on wall speakers at the higher price point. We're still getting the wonderful like actual bamboo finish that you're looking at. So they look really nice. They're on wall design, but they're definitely at the higher price point. And then if you've got some of these parents who are actually going like whole hog theater, like I want cinema sound and that type of sound output level, and sometimes they might have pretty big rooms, like it might be a great room, right, where you genuinely need some pretty darn high output sound capabilities, but they still want it to be in wall and they still want it to be reasonably affordable. We're talking like $1,500 a speaker here, but not the crazy outlandish, and then high efficiency so that they can be just driven off of an AV receiver. Aperian's Theatris series for in walls, I'm a big fan of those. Again, they come fully sealed. You don't have to worry about talking about backer boxes with them. These ones do come with the dog legs attached, but high sensitivity, high power handling. They're not the smallest, but they're in walls. You're just seeing the grill, nothing else. So in walls and on walls, that's my list. You got RSL, RBH, KEF, Ascend, and Aperian. I think you can point people there. Did you want to talk any more about compact speakers, or am I continuing the list?
No, go ahead, knock yourself out.
Again, low price. If you're talking about like the single woofer, single tweeter, basic bookshelf speaker from RSL, I would consider that a compact bookshelf speaker at a low price point with really good sound quality that I can get behind. So that RSL is going to be on that list. Again, Tom already mentioned the NHT Super Zeros. For more of a mid-price and even a little bit more compact size, and I think nicer looks overall, here, Polk's Signature Elite Series. I'm a pretty big fan of those. They sound pretty darn nice, and they're nice. They have that, like, they look like the compact speaker that so many people like, and they've got a pretty nice aesthetic with a choice of finishes on the outside of them. So Polk Signature Elite deserve placement here. Now, for the higher price point, Ascend Sierra Luna speakers. They can go on wall, but they can also act as just compact bookshelf speakers. And then I already mentioned like the KEF LS50 Metas. I think those appeal to a lot of people, but it's at a higher price point for sure. So then, if we're going full-size speakers, but not just plain black towers, plain black boxes, low price point, since RSL doesn't make towers, and a lot of the other ones that we're talking about don't have something I consider a low price point anymore. Aperian doesn't really have their low price point anymore. That's been gone for quite a long time. And RBH's Impression series, I wouldn't consider that a low price point per se. But ELAC, right? Their new debut 3.0 series, I'd put that into the lower price category. And they've improved the finish options on those ELAC Debut 3.0. I would also put in here, again, this will fit nicely for larger room sizes where higher speaker sensitivity would be a really nice thing to have, but you still want the really nice looks. That JBL Stage series that they brought out along with their own JBL AV receivers, like they're not the cheapest thing ever, but for like, if they want a big center speaker with high sensitivity, if they want big tower speakers with high sensitivity at a pretty darn low price point with nice looks, not just really plain black looks, JBL Stage series is worth considering. Mid-price, I'm like, Kef. What else am I going to point to here? That Kef Q series, for sure. Q Acoustics, though, they have some cool looks to them. Because it's not that the speakers themselves are curved, but they put in some sort of like curved lines in the finishes around the fascia and stuff like that. Q Acoustics has a kind of nice look, good sound quality, mid-range price point. High price, oh my goodness, it's Ascend Sierras again. You know, Sierra Towers, Sierra Horizon, that Kef R series that I mentioned, even higher up in the Kef lineup. But then Aperion again, that Varus 3 series that they have. If you do want curved cabinets, if you want that red burl type of finish, right? Aperion's Varus 3 series can give you that at and really good sound quality along with it. So that's my full list. I think we covered all 9 options and then some, but we've mentioned these brands before.
Yeah. All right, one more, then we're done.
I don't think we can make it through Greg's because he's multi-points there, but we could skip down to Joe's. Joe's we can probably knock out of here.
All right, we'll do Joe and then we're going to leave.
Got it.
Joe is making a bit of a change with his front wide speakers, and he wanted to bounce a couple ideas off us first, because who else he's going to talk about front wides with? I can't even say you came to the right podcast. You came to the right individual in me. Within a podcast, yes. Because my thing is, no. His current front wide speakers are regular bookshelf speakers that closely match his surround and surround backs in-wall speakers. He's got them on speaker stands. But now he is planning to switch to a swivel wall mount, and he's going to use speakers that utilize the same drivers as his front, left, center, and right in-wall speakers, which are all behind his acoustically transparent screen. You said it. Cut it out.
The dog is ready for us to end.
She just saw somebody walked by.
Oh,
that's all it is. I have the window open so we get some light in here. And since he's switching to a wall mount, he wants to nail the placement, and he's come across some conflicting recommendations. It's like 60 degrees. Is that what it is?
It's 60 degrees. Spoiler alert.
That's exactly where it is. I know this, and I'm only knowing it against my will. Everything I know about front wides has been against my will.
Did not want to know it. I've just talked about it so much.
I still don't want to know it.
Can't forget it now.
CDS RP22, which is right up to date, says to take the straight line distance between the surround speaker and the front speaker, divide that exactly in half, and use the median angle to the wall to place your front wide speaker there. The clear idea with this recommendation is that if a sound object pans from the front speaker to the surround speaker, the front wide will fill in the gap exactly halfway between them. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
That's what RP22 says.
But he also has some information directly from mixing and mastering engineers who use the Dolby Atmos renderer. And they say you draw a straight line from the surround speaker to the front speaker, and the front wide goes on that line 1/3 of the distance from the front speaker and 2/3 of the distance from the surround. So closer to the front speaker than the surround speaker. Everyone says to match the tweeter height of your front wides to the tweeter height of your front left and right speakers. So even if your surrounds are elevated a bit, nobody is saying to put the front wide tweeters halfway between the front. That's because that would be a dumb thing.
Well, on a slope, I mean, if you're saying that it's supposed to go halfway between them azimuth-wise, then maybe they go halfway between slope-wise too. But nobody is saying that.
No one's saying that. So what do we say? He does have a window to contend with on one side, so that sort of demands being closer to what Dolby Atmos mixers have said versus the RP22 recommendation. He'd love to hear our thoughts on that. 60 degrees.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you say that, because in the past, Tom has been like, well, they kind of go at the first reflection points of the front, left, and right speakers, which... In the original theory, that was kind of what they were going for, but in practice, that's never what the front wide speakers have really been. Most of what you're ever going to hear from front wide speakers is going to be from an up mixer, the DTS X Neural X Pro up mixer, or the Dolby Surround up mixer if you have a pre-pro that supports it. I happen to know Joe has a Marantz, so it does. But most of what you're going to ever hear from front wide speakers is going to be via up mixing, and it is more or less treating it the same as, so you remember how you could take just a stereo signal, front left and front right, and then you could, with Dolby Pro Logic processing, create sounds that only come out of a center speaker, right? So it's just looking at when are the sounds the equal volume in the left and right channels, the equal timing in the left and right channels. And if that's the case, we know that's supposed to be bang in the middle of your front, left, and right speakers. Dolby Pro Logic could extract those sounds from the front, left, and right channels and have them come solely out of the center speaker. It's pretty much the same thing that's happening with front wides these days. It's like, okay, you got your front left main speaker, your surround left speaker, and then if there's a sound that's the same volume and the same time between those two speakers, well, that should be coming out of a speaker that's in between those two of them. That's the front wide speaker. But here's where I think it gets interesting, and here's where I've landed on. Now, I landed on this experimentally. I didn't land on this theoretically. When I first installed front wides, I didn't install it just in my theater where I can close the doors. I tried this out in my living room that's open to my dining room and kitchen. I tried it in several different scenarios. And I'm like, the only way to me, experimentally, front wides sounded correct, where I didn't go, oh, that's kind of too far forward or that's kind of too far back, was at 60 degrees azimuth, and that was it. 60 degrees, whether my walls were wider apart or non-existent on one side or closer together or whatever. It was like, no, I went by angle. It was 60 degrees every single time. And then theoretically, I kind of worked my way backwards, and it's like, oh, well, that actually, to me, ends up making sense, because let's go back to that front left, front right scenario, and we're using Dolby Pro Logic to matrix out a center channel. What if physically your front left speaker was farther out to the side than your front right speaker? You had an asymmetrical physical placement of your front left and right speakers. When you matrix the center channel using Dolby Pro Logic, you don't physically shift your center speaker over to the left, right? Mm-hmm. You use the trim levels so that if the front left and right speakers are the only things playing, you still get a stereo image that's now slightly pulled to the right, physically, so that it's where a center speaker should physically be. Use the trim levels to do that. But as far as matrixing out a center channel from front, left, and right using Dolby Pro Logic, you physically place the center speaker centered in your TV screen, even if for whatever reason your front left speaker had to be farther away physically. I'm like, that is what's going on with front wides. It's like, okay, even if you have the scenario where your front left main speaker is at 30 degrees azimuth, and then your surround left speaker is at 90 degrees azimuth, right? And those are the recommendations by Dolby and DTS and Oro and everybody else. Well, then 60 degrees is going to be exactly in between them, right? But of course, they allow you to have, well, maybe their front left main speaker is not 30 degrees. Maybe it's at 25 degrees. It's, a little closer to the center. Maybe your surround speaker is not at 90 degrees. It's at 100 degrees or 110 degrees. It's a little bit behind your seats. Those are really common things. The front wide, though, is more akin to the matrixed center speaker between a front left and right, me now thinking this through, than it is to, it actually just goes physically exactly in the middle from wherever my front speaker and my surround speaker is. No, it's like a derived center channel in between those two channels, and that center speaker is always going to be centered. The front wide is always going to be 60 degrees. It's not going to get pulled to the left or the right just because I physically moved my surround speaker farther back or something like that. So that's the theoretical and the practical experiential version of it. I'm like, it's 60 degrees and nothing else ever sounded right to me. So yeah, that's where I've landed. I don't agree with RP22 or these Dolby engineers. They're both wrong as far as Rob H is concerned. I think I'm right.
And I think you shouldn't do it. So.
Oh, he's doing it. He's having front wide speakers.
And I honestly don't think that. While Rob's experience and all of that thing he said, I'm sure is correct. I think for most people, if you just kind of slap them up about there, kind of where those first reflection points would be, you'd probably be right around that 60.
Well, I mean, it's going to be right around there anyway if you do it that way. So on our list, we have Greg. Greg had multiple questions. You will be first up next week, Greg.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank our listeners who have donated to the podcast, including those who have gone to avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and gone to the PayPal donation site, as well as our 132 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, that's right. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thank you to our 132 patrons over there.
We also want to thank those who have thanked us, including Infinite Gary, Martin, Dazz, Greg, and Joe.
For sure. Thank you, Gary, Martin, Dazz, Greg, and Joe, for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We very much appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.